1,300 registered participants for this event, spread out from Indonesia, from Aceh to Merauke. And we also have from other countries such as Malaysia, Philippines, and Uzbekistan. It's also an honor for me to introduce and welcome our keynote speakers today. The first speaker is Dr. Benedict Valentine Arulanandam, PhD. He is the senior and researcher from Sunway College, Malaysia. And the second speaker is Mr. Adrianto, MA, PhD. He is the Director of General Transfer Fund, Ministry of Finance, Republic of Indonesia. Not only for the keynote speaker, we also would like to welcome all the lecturers from Economics Faculty, Universitas Sriwijaya, and also Professor Dr. Muhammad Adam, SMA, as the Dean of Economic Faculty, Universitas Sriwijaya. Dear participants, before we start, allow me to read the code of conduct during the webinar. First, we suggest you to make a comfortable seat and then use your headphone if your position is in the crowd. Please activate your webcam during the webinar and do not activate your audio to prevent noise. Please use your own personal identity on your Zoom profile. And for questions, please write down your question in the questioning and answering forum. E-certificate will be given to the participant who accomplished the whole session. And chat room only allowed for communication about materials, topic, questions, ideas, opinions, critiques, and suggestions. E-certificates and material link will be shared at the end of the webinar. E-certificate will be given to the participant who fill and submit the feedback questionnaire not later than 30 minutes after the end of the webinar. Dear participant, please join the whole session of the webinar because we will share you some giveaways sponsored by Erlangga Book Publisher for participants who can answer the question. Before we start the ceremonial, we would like to invite Mr. Ihsan Hamidi, SHI-MSE, to lead us for the opening prayer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Ihsan Hamidi.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start this agenda, let's pray to our mighty God. So this agenda must be success and give us the knowledge that we need. For who's not a Muslim, please pray by your own faith, but allow me to lead this prayer by Islamic ways. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Hamdan na'imin hamdan syakirin hamdan yuwafi ni'amahu wa yukafihu mazidah. Ya Rabbana walakal hamdu kama yanbaghi li jalali wajhikal karim wa 'azimi sultanik. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad. Allahumma inna nas'aluka salamatan fid din wa afiatan fil jasad wa ziyadatan fil ilmi wa barakatan fil rizqi wa taubatan qablal maut wa rahmatan indal maut. Amaghfiratan ba'dal maut. Allahumma hawwin alaina fi syakaratil maut wan najata minan nari wal afwa indal hisab. Allahumma ighfir lana wa li walidayna warhamhuma kama rabbayana shighara wa li jamil mu'minina wal mu'minat wal muslimina wal muslimat al ahya'i minhum wal amwat innaka ala kulli syai'in qadir. Allahumma sahil umurana wa umura walidayna ma damatis samawati wal ard. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una. Allahumma ja'al jam'ana hadza jam'an marhuma wa tafarraqana min ba'dihi tafarraqa ma'suma. Allahumma arinal haqqa haqqa warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arinal batila batila warzuqna ijtinabah. Rabbana zalamna anfusana wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna lanakunanna minal khasirin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minna wa minkum. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you to Mr. Ihsan Hamidi for leading us to pray today. Dear participant, for the first agenda, we would like to invite Mrs. Isni Andriana S.A. MPhil PhD to deliver the opening speech for today. As the representative from Economic Faculty, Universitas Sriwijaya. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mrs. Isni Andriana S.A. MPhil PhD.
Thank you, host. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and also my colleagues also there. First of all, let me say how pleased I am to see so many of you gather here for this third webinar. Your presence here is a reflection of your interest in this webinar, and I am convinced that the presence all of you here will contribute to the value of discussion. My presence here is represent the Dean of Economic Faculty, Universitas Sriwijaya, who was unable to join us due to a meeting at the same time with this webinar. So today we have with us speakers who I have no hesitation in describing as exceptional, and it is an honor for me to welcome first from this morning, Mr. Benedict Valentine Arulandan, PhD from Sunway College, Malaysia. Welcome back, Doctor. And also Mr. Adrianto, MA, PhD from General Transfer Funds, Minister of Finance, Republic of Indonesia. Welcome, Mr. Adrianto, PhD.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We are delighted and honored to host this third international webinar about COVID-19 pandemic, new normal, and its impact on the regional economics. It is organized as a part event of the international webinar in Economic Faculty, Universitas Sriwijaya. This webinar is principally designed to enhance our skill in the research field. And this webinar also one of the important steps to develop our skill during the COVID-19 pandemic periods. In the closing, I wish to express my gratitude to all of you, the participants, for your full cooperation and contribution to this the third webinar. I take this opportunity to thank the speakers and organizers. I wish you a very fruitful and productive webinar. Thank you very much. And wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Host, back to you again, host. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Isni Andriana SAM in PhD for the opening speech. Ladies and gentlemen, before the speakers start their presentation, I would like to invite Dr. Ihsan Hajri MM to become the moderator for this session. But before I deliver this session to the moderator, let me introduce our moderator today. Dr. Isan Hajri is assistant professor in economics faculty, Universitas Sriwijaya. During his career, he has many experiences as a speaker and moderator in international conference. He also won 3 awards of the best paper in international conference held in USA, Russia, and South Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, we present you Dr. Isan Hajri, MM.
Thank you for the host. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For our distinguished speaker, Dr. Benedict Valentin Arulanandam, PhD, from Sunway College, Malaysia. Our distinguished speaker, Mr. Adrianto MMMA, PhD, Director of General Transfer Fund, Ministry of Finance, Republic of Indonesia. The Honorable Dean and Vice Deans of the Faculty of Economics, Universitas Sriwijaya, the Honorable Head of Department of Management, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Sriwijaya, Mrs. Isti Andriana, MPhil, PhD, the Honorable Host and MC of our event, Mrs. Isnawati, MSE, and our warm welcome to all lecturer, faculty member, and all participants. First of all, we'd like to thank you for gathering here in this platform and welcome to the International Webinar Series 3 with the topic COVID-19 Pandemic, New Normal and its Impact on the Regional Economics. We hope with attending this scientific webinar will be a great opportunity to learning and sharing about COVID-19 pandemic, new normal and its impact on the regional economics. It is very great experience and opportunity for all participants. For the participant who wants to ask a question, can write in the chat room or raise hand in the Zoom platform. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 2 honorable speakers for this session. I will read a short bio of our first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Benedict Valentin Arulanandam, PhD, has been in Malaysian corporate arena for more than 2 decades, spanning from manufacturing, education, biotechnology, and banking industry. In the academic field, he has close to 12 years of experience conducting lectures and seminars. From a humble beginning, Dr. Benedict completed his degree from the United Kingdom and by God's grace, completed his Master in Finance from Australia, University of Southern Queensland, while working in the corporate sector. While serving as an invited speaker with the University of Syracuse MBA visits to Malaysia, Dr. Benedict identified his calling in the field of academics. Hence, he embarked upon his Doctor of Philosophy or PhD with University Putra Malaysia, Putra Business School. While serving with a local bank in the capacity of the head of department, Dr. Benedict completed his PhD in the field management and finance. Dr. Benedict now serves as a senior lecturer in Victoria University, Melbourne undergrad program with the Sunway Education Group in Selangor, Malaysia. Apart from the publication, Dr. Benedict has also co-authorized several manuals on financial planning, conducted talk on financial management and taxation in several institutions of higher learning in Malaysia. He also presents paper in international conference. In 2017, he was one of the recipients of the Harvard Travel Grant, awarded by Jeffrey Chase Institute of Southeast Asia with Harvard University, Boston, USA. He also a member of Athener, Athens Institute of Education and Research, Greece. Dr. Benedict possesses strong leadership, excellent problem-solving skills, effective team-building know-how, and good project management attributes. He has special interest in financial management, financial literacy, corporate governance or ethics, corporate anthropology, economic sustainability, leadership, and corporate social responsibility. Now, I will read a short bio of our second speaker. Our second speaker is Mr. Adrianto, MA, PhD. Has been Director of General Transfer Fund since December 2019. He is in charge of formulating fiscal transfer policies, ensuring local government fiscal health, and robust national economic growth. Previously, he was Director for Macroeconomics Policy, Fiscal Policy Agency, Ministry of Finance since 21 August 2017. He conducts dynamic work in high-level macroeconomics analysis and fiscal policy formulation. Previously, Dr. Adrianto was a head of international economy analysis and investor relation division. He also has extensive experience working in various areas in Ministry of Finance, from taxation to international cooperation policy, including G20 forum. During 2007 until 2009, Executive Director Office in Washington, D.C. Dr. Adrianto owns a bachelor degree in financial management from Sriwijaya University, Indonesia, and a master degree in management from University of Sriwijaya and economic development from International Institute of Social Studies Erasmus University. He also holds PhD in economics from the Australian National University. Ladies and gentlemen, to shorten our time, we beg the willingness of our first speaker, Dr. Benedict Valentin Arulanandam, PhD, to deliver the public lecture. To Dr. Benedict, the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly? Can you hear me? Yes, great. Thank you very much to Dr. Ishan and also Dr. Isni. Thank you so much. And to our host, thank you. And warmly welcome to Dr. Adrianto. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for welcoming me. I'm so humbled. I had the 2 sessions today in the morning. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate, right? And I do not claim to be expert, but just want to share what I've learned over the years. Now, let me fish out my my slides. Yes. Can you see my slides clearly? Yeah? Can? Yes, can. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, today's topic is on COVID-19, pandemic new normal, and its impact on regional economics. Now, I've done a little bit of research on that and see there is a relation between economic crisis and various pandemics. Right. Now, way back in 3000 BC and coming to 430 BC, there was a financial panic in 1833 with respect to the plague that hit Greece, Athens. Then we have the plague of the Syrian, where you have civil wars that affected economic growth as well. Then you have in 1346, the Black Death that resulted in banking crisis. While you notice that as we go along, there is some kind of an impact of pandemics with economic crisis. Of course, further research has to be done, but nevertheless, there is some kind of a relationship when it comes to pandemic. Of course, we can say that when there's a pandemic, of course, demand and supply will be affected, and also we know that employment will be affected. But besides that, there is more to this. There is more to this. Each time we have an issue, the humankind seem to be addressing this, and then you have the next issue coming up, right? Even the H1N1, 2009 to 2010. It is prior. It was just prior to this. We had the 2008 global financial crisis. 1997, we also had this issue where you have this issue of AIDS that came in. And now COVID-19, we have recession, we have so many black days, Black Thursday, Black Monday, etc., etc. And you find that this particular disease, although it spreads, it affects every part of the world, from the west to the east, right? This is a good example, right? And also polio those days when it was affected, although it came from Africa, but you notice that it affects every part. This is what we call the butterfly effect, that affects one particular area and it sort of has a domino effect over the entire part of the globe. Now, in particular, in 1832, we find that New York City was in a standstill because of the plague that hit them, and that resulted in panic, that it resulted in economic decline, and that resulted in employees feeling sick. They're not able to come to work, and you notice that lack of healthcare during that time in 1832. And also, you notice that at that time, New York City was the peak, the peak city, the city that has everything, right, compared to any other parts of the US. And you notice that it brought a standstill. Now, having said that, of course, you can say, look, there will be definitely an economic impact. But what is important here is the opportunity where each pandemic has to offer. Yes, on one hand, we are sad. Many lives has been lost during these pandemics. Yes, we are very sad. But at the same time, it gives opportunity for organization, for institution, for governments to rethink, to reposition, to blossom new ideas from this particular crisis. And crises are to be seen on a positive note. Crisis, there is still hope. But when there's a disaster, there's no hope. So as long there's a crisis, and this hope is to change. This hope is to reassess. This hope gives us a chance to look in the mirror on ourselves and on our organization, on our institution. Are we actually ready to be agile enough, to be flexible enough, to change and to take chance and to take the particular opportunity that is opened during this crisis? I give you a very good example. Institutions, basically, when the pandemic came, right, when there was a shutdown in the month of March and all that, many of them were not ready. Many of them, they wish that to go back to pre-COVID because they want to go through their traditional face-to-face classes. But then, this particular pandemic gives birth to a new opportunity. Are we able to introduce online education? Are we able to penetrate new markets using this online? Are we able to harness our revenue using this particular new model? So all these are questions that institutions are asking themselves. So that is an opportunity. We have to redesign, we have to rework around this, because there will be a crisis happening in the future. I'm sure we all know that. We all know there will be another pandemic coming. Are we going to sit back and say, look, I wish that everything is pre-pandemic rather than post-pandemic? So therefore, you find that even businesses has to change, because to assess whether they're agile enough, their paradigm has to change, and there will need to be a mindset change. There is a rhythm. You find that there's a contagion effect. What do you mean by contagion? It means a spreading across the globe. And this gives us an opportunity to look at, over the years, over the centuries, mankind has always been in a linearity position. Meaning, 450 years ago, the Newtonian, the Descartes, where they introduced reductionist concepts, where this reductionist concept has been embedded into education systems, into the medical field, into every field, even of business, whereby you find that linearity concepts are being so ingrained into the system, where we find that this is the way we have to operate. And this has been going on for centuries. Then came pandemic after pandemic. Even before that, you have seen in the slide earlier. So, but then we are using a linearity. We are using linearity approaches, because the whole idea is a linearity. That's what we have been learned. We have been told. But the whole entire globe, the whole entire universe is a non-linearity concept, a non-linearity platform. So we are using a linearity approach to address non-linear. So therefore, it is not apple to apple. All these years, we've been using a wrong technique. All these years, we've been using a wrong technique, right? Why? Because we are focusing linearity solutions to a non-linear environment. So what do I mean by that? I mean that, as you can see, it can be crisis after crisis. In fact, one good area that we can use as an example is the banking crisis. So we have found so many banking crises over the years. Why? Because of the non-linearity approach. What do I mean by non-linearity approach? I'll come that in a moment. With this contagion effect, right? Prior to 1997, this was not used as a word called contagion, but after 1997, it was used. Why? Because it means it is basically a transmission of this shock across the globe, a butterfly effect. You know, what happened in Mexico in the 1980s has affected parts of the US and Europe because of this butterfly effect. This is one term that is used by Malcolm Gladwell, you know, in his book called Tipping Point. Tipping point. And you find that because of globalization, we find that we are very much connected, and this contagion effect spills over. And you find that it affects regional economics. So therefore, what must regional economies do? They must address this pandemic as an opportunity to revamp, as an opportunity to address, as an opportunity to look at what is the particular challenges and to address that with immediate effect. But then although yes, is easier said than done. It is easier said than done. You and I know that. And you know how difficult it is for government sometimes to move. However, this gives an opportunity. The opportunity is there, whether we want to take it or not. For institutions, for companies, right? You find that there's a ripple effect. There is always an asymmetrical information. And this crisis seems to spill over because of globalization. And this contagion affects investor behavior. Now, investors are shy to come in now to certain parts of the world. Why? Because of the COVID issue. Why? Because of economic recovery seem to be slow. So therefore, investors are rather postponing, or they are looking at other regions. And you find that why do local crises spread internationally? Again, it's because of globalization, because of the spread of interconnectivity, right? You find that therefore we have to look at what are the economic models that we can now propose to look at this kind of periodic pandemic wave. What sort of economic model? It's time that we rethink of our economic model. It's time that we rethink about how are we going to do business now for the companies. How are institutions going to address, right, this particular issue of a continuous flow of pandemic, and yet be able to be sustainable, although there are future shocks. Economies are interconnected. You find that because of the internet, we have the increase of connectivity, and you have increase in globalization. Now markets are being open, and you find that because of this connectivity, whatever happened in one country will have consequences, and one of the consequences is capital mobility. And you find that there is a relationship between the epidemiological incidents and that has a contagion effect over the financial crisis. And what do I mean by epidemiological incidences? Biological issues. Biological, like for example, you have the COVID-19 is one of them. Then you have the Ebola in Africa. Then you have the H1N1. Then you have the AIDS factor. So all these things affects. And you see, the thing about COVID-19, what puzzles the whole world is that we were all caught unaware. Number two, we did hear some news, but we thought it's like another malaria, you know, it can easily be found, the cure easily to be found. So many quarters took it very easy. Then you find that nobody really budgeted for such kind of incidents. You know, some countries are locked down for 4 months, and 4 months means a lot of economic fallout. And you find that the issue of biologization of financial crisis, where you find that this pandemic has immediate effects on financial crisis. Jobs are lost. So the economy is very much interconnected all over the world. But having said that, we can't live in isolation, right? When we live in isolation, we are not going to get capital inflow much, and countries' GDP will not grow as what we expect. At the same time, unemployment will cascade down to social issues. And you find that some studies by Barrow et al. And all that, you find that there is a relationship between pandemic incidences and economic outcome. At the same time, you find that issues like even in Europe, in 14th century, you find that such kind of issues has dampened economic activity. When I talk about cost of pandemic, there's whole macro and micro. Macro meaning GDP, employment, interest rate, inflation. Where you find, like a good example, many countries today have reduced their interest rate, their base lending rate, right? In some countries, it's called base rate. In Malaysia, it's 2%. In Australia, is 0.5%. But all these countries who have reduced their base lending rate, the funny thing is that it should increase the demand for loan, and because cost of capital is so cheap. However, we find that the scenario is the reverse, meaning that many people, many organizations, many companies are not coming forward to take loans from the banks because not because of although the cost of funds is so cheap, but they are looking at the macro risk level, because we do not know how long this pandemic will last. Number two, we do not know whether the vaccine will come on time. And we do not know also how effective is the vaccine. All these are ambiguities. Like anyone, like any disease that coming into the world, we all know, is that a cure? Or will the cure really be a cure? Or rather, is it just a temporary thing? So there's so many unanswered questions. So therefore, it affects. So companies do not want to expand. So when they don't want to expand, they cannot have greater employment. Then you have the micro level. The micro level is where liquidity, and today's scenario, liquidity is very tight, very tight. Although funds are becoming cheap, but then still you find that there's not enough spurge into the market in terms of cash. People are very watchful. They only buy what they need, right? And we are looking at survivalship. We're looking at because demand and supply have shifted. So you notice that the cost is a tremendous cost. The pandemic has given a big blow over the years. And we notice that why, although we have so many crises after crisis, so many pandemic after pandemic since the creation of the world, but yet how come organizations, institutions are not learning? What is wrong? There must be something wrong that each time there's a pandemic, we all get scared, everybody gets scared, company closed down and all that. But why? Weren't we prepared? Weren't we foretold that this continuous pandemic over the years over the centuries, over the decades, has already taught us a lesson? Why? Because we are always approaching this matter on a linearity scale, because this matter is a non-linear. So you can't approach a non-linear with a linearity kind of concept. It doesn't work. You can't put an apple and orange together. Yes, they are fruits. Okay, we all love that. But you can't put them together saying that they are matching. They are not matching. Because an apple is an apple and orange is an orange. So that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to solve all this. Mankind is trying to solve all this by saying, oh, let's think out of the box. But whereas we have been taught in the linearity concept, that's the reason sometimes it's so difficult to think out of the box. And some jurisdiction, they are so excited in trying to bring in certain high technology, but then high technology, while we welcome high technology, But like data science and all that is fantastic. But then we also have to look at the preparedness of the society. The particular literacy, the technology literacy that the society has, whether the society has the infrastructure to support. And finally, if the society has too much of unemployment, you cannot introduce this high technology, because high technology will reduce the particular opportunity for jobs, especially for manual jobs, right? So that if you have high unemployment, you will definitely have society issues. So therefore, it is very important to slowly bring about this change. Even for that matter, the education system has to also be readdressed to address this issue, to be redesigned to address this issue of non-linearity. During the pandemic, what is important? Short-termism. Liquidity is always a crisis. This gives an opportunity for processes to be relooked. You know, there's so many companies today, they're trying to go into online just to increase revenue. But then, while that is a motivating factor, but at that same time, you have to look at the process, the whole supply chain process, whether the supply chain process is able to support your online business. So the processes has to be relooked. Institutions have to relook on the various programs that they have. We are so used to about the linearity concept, about B2C business. You know, we talk about B2C, right? Business to consumer. But today is more towards C2B, consumer to business. What does that mean? It means businesses are to be agile to switch into consumer variable needs. Likewise, institutions must recognize the need out there and to revamp their syllabus to meet the needs of the consumer. Rather than saying, walking into the institution and say, look, I have this degree, take it or leave it. But then the relevancy to the market. Of course, there is other issues like expertise. Sometimes we find that we are shortage of expertise. But then that should not stop us, but we are supposed to move on, because every crisis is an opportunity. Every crisis allows us to change our paradigm, to look at things in a different way altogether, and to reassess where did we go wrong. Revenue repositioning, to reposition our revenue. For example, not only in terms like the institutions are saying, now our face-to-face since now is less, can we now do something? Now, why don't we look at having short courses online, charging them a bit less, penetrating to the unreachable areas? Of course, the other challenge is we need to have proper bandwidth and all that. But having said that, there's so many areas still they are accessible, but people are not getting the necessary academic support. So these short courses online are able to penetrate. Secondly, why not look at, for example, if you have 30 subjects in a particular degree program, you have core subjects. Core subject can be taken in that university. But other elective subjects, the students can plug from any university, including Sunway, including Oxford, Cambridge, and then use that as a credit to enhance their experience, to enhance their knowledge. And there you are. You have basically a global student who is able to get through all these other electives by studying in other universities. So you notice that gives a broad expansion of knowledge, and the quality of our students will increase. But they say, oh, you know, this may affect revenue. No. Actually, it will not affect revenue. Why? Because that will gain more in the long run. It will gain greater popularity and more people will join your university. So therefore, in the long run, we see a better effect. But then, yes, in the short run, we can't see in the effect because this takes time. But during the pandemic, it is companies have to restructure so that liquidity is well managed, working capital is well managed. And we all know from the accounting background, working capital is where current assets will supersede current liabilities. So you notice that that is what, and furthermore, during this time, morale of staffs, morale of people are very low. So the morale has to be heightened. And this is where companies and institutions have to motivate students, motivate staffs, so that not to give up. Why? Because sometimes we can look things at a negatively, but then negative lenses will not take you very far. The whole world has gone through crisis, but the moment we reflect on the positivity side of each crisis, we'll come out victorious. We'll come out victorious. What are the areas of your vulnerability as an institution, as a company? Draw an influence diagram. How does this pandemic affects processes within each faculty, within each department of your organization? Excuse me. Reassessing supply chain. What are the current weaknesses which will give the greater impact? Some companies tend to reduce cost, but then research have shown the $1 reduction in costs will give you a lesser impact in your profitability compared to a $1 increase in revenue. So therefore, this means shifting your energy towards revenue creation, changing your whole entire package for consumers, changing your approach in terms of marketing, in terms of advertising, so you channel your energy towards greater revenue recognition. And that will increase morale, that will bring about sustainability. I know the cost approach has been there for centuries. Anything happen, immediately readdress cost, cut the wages. But all these things are basically, it will hurt the morale of the staff, morale of the people. So this is the time you want the morale to be heightened, so that positivity environment will create greater creativity skills, greater ideas will flow when there is positive environment. Risk mosaics. That means look at what are the short-term, long-term, medium-term risk. What are the areas of importance? So of course you may say that organizations will reply and saying that, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, but then that's merely excuses. You and I know if we were to be serious on it, we can reassess where we are. Look, all these crises gives us an opportunity to look in the mirror. Where are we at fault? Where can we change? How can we change? How can we readdress certain processes in our organization to change? Which area of the government sector that can be sort of addressed to address the particular needs of the community? Like during this crisis, government intervention is important. Why? Because money supply is sort of very weak. So that's why government intervention is crucial during this time, right? To create jobs so that there will be demand. When people get employed, they will have demand for certain goods and services. And of course, to reduce unemployment. Now, coming back to the linearity and non-linearity, I would like to draw your attention to this organization 1 and organization 2. Organization 1 is a very traditional concept, right? Which is easily about close to 500 years old. Hierarchical, centralized leadership, right? And greater interdependence, concentrated workforce, there's only certain specialization, policy and procedure driven. There's nothing wrong with that, that's fine. But in today's dynamic world, in a world where there's non-linearity is emphasizing over and over and again, shouldn't institutions and organizations rethink what are they going to do? Rethink in their survivalship, rethink in their sustainability. What about networking? What about distributed leadership? What about lesser interdependence? workforce that are dispersed, they're able to be cross-trained, and everybody can be able to handle the issue, right? Of course, in some scenario you cannot. For example, you are trying to develop a vaccine. Certain scientists are the one. You can't sort of having a distributed knowledge to everyone because these are IP matters. But I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, because this is pertaining to most of the organization, right? Guided by flexible rules. Because the moment we have this control, you are stifling creativity. You know, some organization come and tell me, how am I going to encourage my staffs to think out of the box? Well, let's look at the control. Who is controlling? You find that the CEO is so much of control. So it's so much of control, it stifles creativity. And the other area that stifles creativity is the concept that is called a slavery mindset. What do I mean by a slavery mindset? We find that sometimes some parts of the world, organizers were to squeeze the staff. You know, you work late and all that. You are overwhelmed with work. When you're overwhelmed with work, you have no time to think of creative ideas, how to improve your processes. You have no time because you are so overwhelmed with work, understaffing. So therefore, and many people across the globe find it that, you know, it's difficult just to leave the job, although I don't like the job, and then that's it, you know, let me just bite my teeth and carry on. So that means greater sickness because of stress, right? Greater headaches. But then we just carry on with the flow, right? Because of that, you find that it dampens creative skills. So the organization in the long run cannot grow. But you will see, on the other hand, your competitor who allows greater non-linearity, you find that greater ideas has been blossomed, greater revenue streams, and greater sustainability approaches. How do I know whether my organization is linear? In this COVID pandemic, how do I know that my organization is linear? These are certain questions, right? You don't have to answer me, but this is part where you can reflect. Do I wait? Does the organization wait for the pandemic to be over so that to go back to pre-COVID era? Does the organization think that the pandemic as negative and unwanted phenomena? Are they afraid of losing control because they want to ensure that you know what is happening? I remember companies those days, even today, you find that companies are so engrossed in, excuse me, in the budgeting processes until they want the budgets to be as accurate as possible. Well, budgets are just basically forecasting. While we admit it should be as accurate, but it cannot be the sole driver, because honestly, you do not know what is going to happen tomorrow. We don't even know what is going to happen in the next 1 hour. So how can you do budgeting that is so precise? You can't. It's just a guideline. But much energy has been spent on budgeting processes until the energy can be easily be shifted to other more productive areas. I'm not saying that budgeting is less important. It is important, but there seems to be an overemphasis. Is your organization hierarchical based? Do they lack flexibility? Can they just change like that? Or it's so difficult to change? These are the questions that you could ask yourself. Now, I think somebody is writing something here. Right. Anyway, the business model, the non-linearity business model. It is important. Okay, let me give you an example of non-linearity approach. In my paper on quantum governance, I wrote on where quantum science is used in corporate governance structures, whereby the point of ethical behavior is so important in any corporate governance sector. Corporate governance in any sector, the ethical attitudes, the ethical behavior is so important. Why? Because if board members do not understand that whatever action they do affects the entire company, because it is a butterfly effect. It affects the entire industry. Whatever they do reflects on who they are. So this is what non-linearity concept mean. In a linearity concept, you will be only interested in bottom line. On my earlier session, I was sharing, I was invited to a launch of a completed condominium. And in that, the person who was organizing it came forward and said, look, you are invited. So I was happily going. And in that, there was a big banner saying that we are going green. So I asked the organizer, what do you mean going green? He says, we want each household to plant a tree around the condominium. Well, there are 500 households. So each house would be planting. So you have 500 trees around the condominium. Then I asked him, right, you have slaughtered or you have cut off 3,000 trees, and now you're only planting 500 trees, and you're calling this as going green. That is a linearity concept. That is a typical linearity concept. Whereas a non-linear, you know what non-linear will do? Non-linear will plant 2 trees in every tree that they chop off. And furthermore, they will be designing the tree, each tree, to save each tree rather than simply chopping it off. And also a non-linearity concept will also tell, do they need a condominium in that area? Is there a necessity? Sometimes you find that in certain economies, it's basically overbuilt. And you and I know that around the globe. You know, certain places are just overbuilt. But the question is that, is it necessary? Is it necessary? Oh, we want that because greater employment. But you don't simply build blindly at the cost of the environment. And today we know climate change is an issue. And we know climate change is an issue. And yet, many economies are just turning a blind eye. So therefore, this non-linearity concept is very timely to be brought about, to be rewired, to be re-educated, so that we can improve ourselves. And digitization is one of the ways where we reshape. But having said that, we cannot simply jump the gun in digitization while unemployment rate is high. Because, for example, robotics, although it's nice to hear, but in an economy where there is abundant of labor supply, by having robotics, you are increasing unemployment. Of course, you have to retrain, reskill, things like that happens, but it doesn't happen immediately. Of course, it takes time. But having said that, in an economy that unemployment is high, they have to look at other approaches to increase employment. Now, you notice that in a non-linear business model, it does not work on a proportion basis. For example, a $1 of increase in revenue may not give you a $1 increase in your profits. It may be in a different format. So therefore, because there are so much holistic ideas, holistic influences that influence an organization. So a non-linearity model during this time of pandemic and economic crisis and even regional issues, we have to look at in a different dimension, to look like there are other forces that are at play. For example, if a nation wants to rebuild after this COVID-19, you notice that there will be a lot of government has to spend a lot of money on projects, so that to inspire employment, so that there will be demand for goods and services. At the same time, they have to also ensure that these projects will create a positive impact on GDP growth. Not simply building something, no, but it has to create a positive effect on GDP growth. Only then you find that overall the GDP will blossom. Otherwise, you find that many projects are left idle, and that's it. It doesn't really contribute to the GDP growth. So which area for each country, which area to accelerate economic growth that will produce the highest impact? And during this crisis, that's what most of the governments are doing. They are focusing on projects that will create the highest impact in terms of employment, in terms of GDP. And that is important because pressing issues require pressing measures. Then again, having a non-linearity business model means change of mindset, and a complex adaptive nature. How do you immediately change? Because you're so used to doing something for centuries, we have been doing a linearity model, and suddenly these things happen, and we're asking ourselves now, how can I change? Therefore, a step-by-step approach in terms of institutions, in terms of organization, companies, how to survive, how to be sustainable during this time. Because there will be crisis after crisis in the future. We all know that. But historically, there's a pattern. Are we going to wait for the next crisis? Or are we going to change and look at this as an opportunity to grow, opportunity to revisit, opportunity to bring in new concepts into our business world? And that is crucial. That is very, very crucial. Why? Because these are opportunities for us to look at ourselves in the mirror, to say that where can we improve? How can we improve? How can we just sit back and say, look, I'm not used to that? Well, you have to, basically, we got to change our mind. And those who do not want to change will be left out. Organizations that don't want to change will be left out. And over time, they will have to close shop. They have to close down because of the unwillingness to change. There is a program in the leadership school of Harvard on the adaptive learning, adaptive leadership, where how does leaders adapt in a spur of the moment on challenges that rises even without warning. How do they change? How do they maneuver? How will you look at opportunity? So each time this particular challenge happens, leaders are revisiting, reassessing. How are they going to approach this? And setting their goals so that the ecosystem where they live in, or where they are in, or where will contribute, and this ecosystem will be very much enhanced over time. In Goldwell's theory in his book Tipping Point, where you find that the butterfly effect comes into, where organizations are pushed, institutions are pushed to the wall, they will have to think of something to survive. So what what are the requirements for us to meet this tipping point? Even many parts of our own life, when we fall tremendously sick, only then we'll think of any other alternative way to solve. Because we are pushed, even in our own lives, when we are pushed into a problem that seems to be unsolvable, then you find that suddenly there will be a new way of thinking. Suddenly there will be somebody giving you an advice that you never thought about. So reaching a tipping point has its advantage, where organization and institutions are able to reposition and to think out of the box, how can they do their next step. And Prigogine talks about self-organization. And at this point, I'd like to share, those of you who are football crazy like me, I like to see Brazil playing. And what attracts me in Brazil playing is that they're very self-organized. Although the coach will tell them something, but when they're on the field, the captain will dictate. And the captain will study the opponent. What is the strategy of the opponent? That's the reason in the first half, generally Brazil doesn't score much, because they always look to assess the opponent, and then the captain will re-strategize, self-organize, so that to address the weakness of the opponent and score a goal. So that's what I like to see. I enjoy seeing Brazil, or in fact, all the time. And I'm sure some of you who are Brazilian fans will agree to that. Because in other words, in any pandemic that comes, how does organization self-organize so that they can still survive, still do not have to have any retrenchment, At the same time, do not have to cut wages. At the same time, able to enhance revenue stream. At the same time, being very cautious on cost matters. So self-organization. And the moment they're able to self-organize, that's where they'll be able to succeed in every kind of crisis. What do I mean by semiotic square? Semiotic square is diving deeper into the situation to see where are the cracks, to see where are the weaknesses, so that these vulnerabilities can be addressed. These issues can be addressed so that institutions can still go ahead and continue their work and impacting communities. Traditional business model to change into a non-linear. What does it require? Reassessment of processes. Flexibility approach. If you're too rigid, you cannot. For example, this is the way I do it. Well, if this is the way you do it, when they require any flexibility, then it can't. Your goals have to be revamped. Your goals cannot be only bottom line. Your goals must be more than that. Must be not only bottom line or little bit of bottom line, but more of morale, more of creativity. Mindset change. Marketing dynamics have to change. You can't be marketing a face-to-face kind of product where you notice that everybody now is going online. So you got to look at short courses, at courses where you can pluck from other institutions and enhance your particular students' credibility. Leadership, adaptive leadership. We need to have leaders who are able to have a vision. You know, that's a very good saying. Without vision, people perish, which is true. Without vision, you will perish. There's no room. So visionary leaders, that is what important. The adaptive visionary leaders. And there you are. You are, of course, this will take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It may take you years. It may take you even generation. But a non-linear business model is what I want to leave with you today. And I'm about to end now. Please be free to ask any questions, and if you have, and my email is there, and my to contact me if you so wish. Thank you very much to Dr. Ishan. Thank you very much for all of you, and I really appreciate your time that you have spent with me today. And please feel free to ask any questions. Thank you very much, and over to you, Dr. Ishan.
Thank you so much for Dr. Benedict for deliver the public lecture. What a great topic. I think we will open the discussion forum after the second speaker present the public lecture. Okay, to start on the time, we move to the second speaker. We beg the willingness of our second speaker, Mr. Adrianto, MMA, PhD, to deliver the public lecture. For Mr. Adrianto, MA, PhD, the time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Isan. I hope everybody can hear me very well. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore, good afternoon, very good afternoon. And I think this is an honor for me to participate in this webinar with the Dr. Benedict. I think this is also an honor for me to have a seminar with you. And I believe everybody in this forum are in healthy condition, especially during this COVID. And I hope what we discussed today can give some positive impact for everybody. So let me try to share screen my my slide. Okay, I hope this can work. Okay, hope this works. Okay. I try to this one. Okay, today we have heard from Dr. Benedict about the impact of the COVID and the perspective from the management and the organization system, how to address the challenges stemming from the COVID, and about the non-linearity. I think I agree that the non-linearity is something that we need to consider in making our decisions. I will start my presentation. I would like to address on the global side first, and then I will come to little bit focus on the fiscal issues addressed in Indonesia side. So, as you know that, and also the Dr. Benedict has mentioned that I think the economy, the world economy has get accustomed to what we call the pandemic. Uh, in his presentation, Mr. Benedict has mentioned that there are so many pandemics since the 18th century or even the 15th century. And actually, I think with regard to the flu influenza virus, it started with the Spanish flu in 918, and then another one century, we also faced the same issue on the influenza with the new mutation with the coronavirus. So, but there are one stark differences between the past pandemic with the current pandemic. I think that's what we call the connectivity. I think this is also something mentioned by Dr. Benedict. The connectivity, the more interconnected among nations in the world economy, I think this makes what we call the current influenza impacts becomes more disastrous. As you know now, is if you see this slide, most big countries, even the most advanced countries, United States, British, Spanish, even some other developed countries in the Europe, they also suffer the coronavirus. And this happens almost in the same time. And you can imagine when the impact of the coronavirus has a bad impact on one economy, the connectivity altogether enforces worse impact on the whole economy. So it's no wonder when the economy in United States or in China, for instance, is declining because of the coronavirus, the whole economy will be infected as well because of the connectivity. So this is very crucial for us to address on the connectivity. So we need to find what kind of policies we need to address when we deal with the more complex of the global connectivity. So I would like to show you some evidence on the impact of the connectivity to the global economy. You can see here, this is that this is, I would like to take one, the global indicator is the Global Purchasing Manager Index. You see here, during the 2019 last year, you see these dots. These dots are representing the level of the PMI. I believe everybody here has understood, has followed this index. This shows the certain or the positivity of the business manager on the business, especially in the manufacturing. So during 2019, we have seen a stagnant level of this index. This was more due to the trade war during last year between US and China. So we have seen stagnant, but everything seems so a bit controllable at the time. But if you see here, after in the beginning of this year, the index suddenly went down to almost 40. It starts around in January or February. So the PMI index went down to 39, to almost 40 in around April. So what happens? This reflects that the manufacturing sector in this world, they have pessimism on what's the new economy will look like. Because when the China's economy is going down, Europe's economy is going down, US economy is going down, so the whole economy will be getting worse. So that reflects what is the connectivity, because one country is impacted, other countries will be impacted as well. But despite this decline, In May, we have seen there is a slight jump of the PMI. This might result from another positivity coming up from the businessmen, because as you know, maybe it comes from the capacity of China to solve partially the issue of COVID in China, which has promoted new development in Chinese economy. But if you have seen that some countries, they have lifted the lockdown, which may give some positivism among the investors or the businessmen. So it seems that despite there is a sudden declining in the PMI, we still see that there is some positivity which we expect can be coming in the coming months. But again, nobody knows what will happen in the coming months. At least from these indicators, we expect that the global economy at least can give a good signal. If you go in detail to each country, you can go to, for instance, the US, for instance. In the US also, it's also experienced almost similar thing. Its PMI went down in April to 41.5 is PMI, but it starts going to 43. Despite it is still under 50, but the upward trend shows a positive expectation for everybody. If you follow that U.S. economy has been able to create a new job for in this the past release, I think this is also shows a good sign of a global economy for the coming months. But it does not necessarily mean that the global COVID can be contained as well. So I don't see any linearity between the economic growth and the potential declining of the COVID in many countries. If you see also here in China, for instance, if you see here in China, in the PMI index, for instance, it's still relative decline in April. The PMI went down to 49, but in May it went up to 50.7, above the threshold index of the PMI. It may reflect, as I mentioned earlier, that there is that the dynamics of Chinese economy to become more stronger because of its some issues on the COVID-19 in China can be partially resolved. So I think this also gives a good sign for the economy. But again, I think the challenges is still there, meaning that the challenges coming from the COVID-19 we still need to solve. I think we need the global common actions to address the issue of the COVID-19. If you go back to another country in Malaysia, Malaysia also the same, also suffers from decline in the PMI, but it starts jumping up in May. Indonesia as well, and I think Indonesia it suffers more deeper in the decline of the PMI to 27, but it starts to go up to 20, around 29 in May. So we also expect that Indonesian economy can become stronger in the coming months. So again, if you see here, that's from the business retail side. From the financial side and commodity side, I would like to show you. This is this graph. Let's go to this yellow first. Yellow represents the copper price index. During the beginning of this year, it's declining. In March, April, it's declining and it starts going up in May. Also, if you see here is this orange is the Brent oil. We remember that the oil brands has almost touched 20 in May, but now the Brent price is start to pick up. So hopefully, despite we have seen during the period of February to May, there is a decline in the commodity price, representing the weakening demand of the global economy. But if you see the coming months in June, hopefully this is a good sign for the global economy. At least this gives a positive expectation that the global economy is moving up again. Let's go to the financial sector index. I want to show you in February. Let's go in this chart. In the February, if you've seen there is a jump in the financial market index. I think this is in line to what Dr. Benedict mentioned on the herding behavior. Yeah, you know, I think this herding behavior is an evidence during the crisis in 1997 that there are many investors, they followed other investors because of their limited knowledge on what is going on, or the limited of the information. So there is a high jump of the volatility index since around in May last year. Sorry, this year. So if you see here in the blue line, the MOVE index, this is the volatility index for the fixed income market, relatively stable in 2019, but suddenly jumped to almost 150 during February this year. And the same thing is also for the VIX index. This is an index for the stock market, also jumped to almost 80 to 90 in early of this year. But then it is suddenly gradually go down to the at the level below than 50 for the VIX index, or below 100 for the MOVE index. What does it mean? This represents that there is panic in the market, the financial market. As you know that Chinese economy in this at a time, because of the lockdown in Wuhan, and then there is a significant jump in those who suffer from the positive of the COVID in so many countries, and this give pessimism for the investors, and then they have make a panic in the market, and then I think they also have a concern on where about the investment. And then now it seems to be a bit calm, but it does not really mean that the financial market is not really volatile at the moment, I think. But this is also reflecting that we need to anticipate that what is coming up in the coming months or the coming years. I think there are so many uncertainties. Again, that's the financial market is about the information, and when people do not have the information, they will be a bit volatile. I think this is, countries like Indonesia need to make sure that prudent policies, both fiscal and monetary policies, need to be in place with the very reliable and prudent policies. By that way, can make the investors to be calm with the Indonesian economy, or even with the global economy. Again, also the same thing with this index from the capital proxy index. It shows that there is a decline in the capital flow, meaning that there are many capital coming out from the emerging market economies. So, but again, this is, I think it shows that since May, it seems there is a turning point from the capital flow. But again, I think this might only reflect a temporary signal, but we hope that this is at least a sustainable indicator where we can expect that the situation will be better. And then if we go again with the another presentations, this is from the perspective of the economic growth. So many countries has recorded negative economic growth during the first quarter of this year. The big countries, just like the UK has recorded a negative growth. Germany, except US has still has the positive, although this is a very deep decline compared to the previous quarter. But most countries, they also suffer from a sharp decline of economic growth in the first quarter. China especially is in the first quarter, its economic growth went down to minus 6.8. India as well is India is still quite good, still recorded a positive, but nevertheless this is still much lower than the previous quarter. Some advanced countries in Asia, just like Singapore, also suffers from negative economic growth in the first quarter. Indonesia, on the other hand, Indonesia has recorded positive growth in the first quarter, but we expect, it seems that there will be negative growth in the second quarter. I think most countries expect that there will be a negative growth in the second quarter. I think, but hopefully the situation can be only happen in the first quarter or the second quarter. We hope in the third quarter everything, maybe at least the economy will gradually pick up. I think also this is the forecast from the IMF, OECD, and the World Bank. Overall, the global economy, I think, maybe will be in the deep recession, but hopefully the recessions will not be in the U-shaped recession. We expect that will be a V-shaped recession. So after a sharp decline, we also expect that we can go up to the positive jump to the in terms of the economic growth. Global economy, as you know, the IMF keep revising its a global forecast from 33.39 in January, and in the last forecast in June, it is revised down to minus 4.9. I think this is reflecting that the concern of the impact of the COVID has, it will put more deep impact to the global economy. OECD also almost the same in the same idea with the IMF that the global growth will be in the negative zone, but it is with the much bigger magnitude between minus 7.6 to minus 6%. The World Bank, I think also it's have negative zone as well on its forecast around minus 5.2. I think this is also very challenging for the whole economies. I think this is also we need something unusual. So unusual policies, I think, is needed in this situation. And I would like to go to the Indonesian economy, how this impacts Indonesian economy. This is the situation of Indonesian growth in the first quarter. So as you see that actually Indonesian's economy is impact, I think it starts on in March actually. So during January, February, I think everything was quite normal in Indonesia. We have heard on the bad news on the COVID in China, I think, and I believe at least until the third weeks of February, many Indonesians were still traveling overseas. So I think that's at the time the concern on the spread of the coronavirus was not really on the table at the time. So I think that's why the Indonesian economy may be impacted during March. But you can imagine that only within around 1 month, economy Indonesia, it shows there is a deep decline in economic growth. In the first quarter, Indonesian economy only grew around 2.9%, which is much lower than 5% in the same quarter last year. So only within 1 month of, there is a kind of what we call, this is not really a lockdown, this is what we call as the restricted social mobility, maybe we call something like that. So in March has given a significant impact on Indonesian economy. So you can see here that the consumption declines it's cut almost half, only grew at 2.9 compared to 5.3 last year. Even the investment as well is going down quite deep. From the supply side, most of all sectors suffers from significant decline. Manufacturing, with the significant sector in Indonesian economy, it's almost cut half compared to last year in terms of the economy, in terms of the sectoral growth. If you see here, the trade, even the transportation, is all went to the lower down of economic growth. So I think this is, we have seen here the impact of the COVID. Indonesia has shown evidence that the impact is quite significant to the economy. It's not only because of the domestic economy in terms of the weakening demand, but also the external situation this has impacted the economy. Again, I think this is only the Indonesian indicator. We have seen that in terms of inflation, if you see here, inflation in Indonesia starts in April. It's going down, and then 2.2% in May, and went down to 1.96 in June. As you know, in June is the big festive day, Lebaran Day in Indonesia, and Ramadan Day. Normally, we have seen a jump in inflation during the Lebaran Day or Ramadan, but this year we only have seen there is a decline in the inflation, lower March inflation. It may means two sides. It means that there is a weakening demand, meaning that not many people go out to buy something. And on the other hand, you can say that the economy does not really support high spending in its economy. So I think it shows that from the perspective of the consumption, Indonesian economy, I think this also impacted by the impose of the restricted social mobility. Another indicators we have seen here, Indonesians, just for instance, the JSX, Jakarta Stock Exchange Composite, it's again in April, in May, in March, it went down to almost 3.9, but again, gradually it went up to the 4.9 around in June. I think it seems to show that there is among the investors, they a bit more calm and have more confidence on the economy. I think this is a very good sign. So we may expect that the second quarter we have still we have a negative zone economic growth, but in the third quarter we expect much more positive situation. And then if you go to the how is Indonesian economic growth? Again, the forecasts show that it may impact not only from the health issue, but the COVID-19, it impacts the whole dimensions of the economy or the society. I think this is very much different from the previous issue, from the previous crisis. In 2008, we have seen the crisis, the global crisis. It's mostly impacted on the corporate sectors because of the something happens in the global financial market in the US especially, and it impacts on the global liquidity and impacts on the financial market in especially. But again, Indonesia is still relatively contained from what happens in the global economy, from what happens in the global crisis in 2008. In 1998, for instance, Indonesia also faced a crisis, but at that time it is more coming from the corporate debt at that time. But again, despite we have seen at that time, we have seen an increase in inflation, increase in poverty, but we still see that there are still more rooms for helping Indonesian economy at the time, at least get the assistance from the IMF. But now, I think the situation is very much different. The impact of the COVID is not only on the corporate sectors, but it also impacted on the social sectors. the poverty, employment, and also impact at the corporate sector as well, because there has been issue on the liquidity here. The liquidity means that the investors they have a panic in the market, so there may be less liquid in the financial market because the investors take their money from the emerging market, and this can impact on the overall economy. So if you see here, the poverty is expected will grow to almost 5 to 3 million people will go to go down to the poverty. Unemployment, we expect that there will be additional unemployment between 5 to 4 million people. So I think this is quite challenging for Indonesia. I think this is the forecast from some from the International Institution on the Nation Economy. But in 2020, I think both the IMF or the ADB, they all have the forecast around the negative zone of economic growth. Nevertheless, Indonesia still, the MOF still expects, we expect that the growth will be above the 0%. So that's why I think this is very crucial, what the policies the government need to take to ensure that we are not going to go to the negative zone of economic growth for this 2020. I think this is very crucial. So I would like to start from, okay, let me pass. Okay, this is it. I want to go to the what the government needs to do. Let me start from the government, from the regional sector first. I have shown in my first slides on the national growth, but if we go down to the regional level in Indonesian economy, most of the economy, they also impacted by the COVID. I would like to show you, for instance, DKI Jakarta. DKI Jakarta has the biggest composition of GDP in Indonesian economy. Almost 18% of Indonesian economy is dominated by Jakarta's GDP. Economic growth last year in Jakarta was around more than 6%, but it only declines to 5% in the first quarter of this year. But you know that the Jakarta is trading sector, and the impact seems to only happen around March, because the policy of the restricted social mobility was imposed around March and April. So, but again, there's Jakarta was relatively a bit late on the impact of the COVID because of the restricted mobility. But if you go to other regions where the most of the economy dominated by the manufacturing sector, most of these regions, these subnationals, they suffer from a significant drop of the economic growth. Most of them, almost half of the previous economic growth. You can see here that, for instance, in West Java, last year 5.4%, and the first quarter this year declined to 2.7%. East Java, it grew around 5% in the first quarter last year. It's only grew around 3% in the first quarter of this year. So it seems that what happens in China, because most of this manufacturing sector in these regions, they are export oriented, and China and US is one of two of the most important export destination for Indonesia. When there is a decline in demand from these two countries, this automatically impact Indonesia's manufacturing sector. So it's no wonder we have seen there is a significant drop in the growth in the regions with the manufacturing sectors. But again, this is the first quarter, and most regions, they have not imposed the restricted social mobility. In the first quarter, in the second quarter, the restricted social mobility has been imposed, and we can expect that maybe the negative zone will occur in this region. And I think this is also quite shocking that the Bali is experiencing the negative zone to -1%. So actually, Bali is one of the region in Indonesia with the strong growth around 6%, but it only able to grow in -1. So there is no growth at all in Bali. So Bali is a tourism dominated region. So it's clear that the lockdown or even the restriction of people mobility among countries has impacted tourism in Indonesia. So most of sectors in Indonesia are impacted. Tourism, manufacturing sectors, agriculture, or even as the if you've seen in the previous slide, the service sector are impacted as well. So I think this is very challenging for Indonesian economy. Let's go to the another dimensions of the regional economy in Indonesia. This is the situation of a budget from the local government side. If you see here, this is there are three types of local government revenue. It's own source revenue, and the second one is central government transfer, or we call the fiscal transfers, and others is other type of revenue is we call others. Others mean that it can be in the form of grant, or it can be the form of a kind of additional transfers from the provincial to the kabupaten level. But if it's, the point is, I would like to show you that the revenue from the local government, it also significantly declined. Before the COVID, the total, the aggregation of the local government revenue was around 1.2 thousand trillion. But after the COVID, in March, they revised their budget, and in total, the total government revenue was revised only around 1.52 trillion. So there is a decline almost 16% in local government's own source, local government revenue. I think this is very challenging situation for the local government, because on one hand, the central government also suffers from the decline in revenue because of the, as you have seen, there is a lower economic growth. There is moderation on India important sector in terms of its business, and it transmitted to the local government. So if you see here, there is a decline in this local government revenue to almost 16%. So what the central government does, we instruct the local government to readjust their spending. So in the first budget, the total spending was around 1.3 thousand trillion, and then we asked them to revise to almost 1,000 trillion rupiah. So this is a way to compensate the sharp decline of the local government revenue, because if we do not do the compensation to the revenue drop, the important spending in the local government will be impacted. So if the spending is impacted, they cannot do the strategic spendings to ensure the welfare of the people. So if you see here, there is a significant decline in the spending. I think this is also very crucial for the local governments to make sure that they have to refocus and reallocation in terms of their spending. So this is very important policies, fiscal policies, where we deal with the local governments. So the central governments instruct the local government, please adjust the local budget to accommodate the decline in the revenue. So that has been done, and I think this is also an ongoing process. We still see what's the impact on the economy after the decline in the expenditure. So overall, if we see the impacts of the COVID, So many countries, they impose the lockdown. Indonesia only imposed the restricted social mobility, and the impacts is not only on the social mobility, but also it impacts the whole sectors of the economy. I think not only on the social dimensions, but it also impacts on the political dimensions, because we need to address all issues during the crisis. So at least four important dimensions we need to look at. The first one, the health sectors. Second one, the social, economy, and the finance. These four sectors are strategic sectors in Indonesian economy. The health sector is very crucial because we don't have healthy people, so it will not become one of the factors for the economic growth. Social is very crucial. We need to ensure that people are not hungry, people are not starving. So we need to ensure that they have sufficient income to make their life. So I think this is very crucial. Economy, yes, the business sector must go. We need to, the government must support the economy, must support the real sectors. If they cannot, if the real sector stops, of course, there will be loss of jobs, there will be loss of the government revenue, there will be loss of the economic activity. I think that will make economy worse. So that's why the impact on economy is very crucial to be addressed. On the finance side, yes, it's very crucial, because I think this is also mentioned by Dr. Benedict that the liquidity issue, there will be potential many small business impacted by the business, because I think everybody has known during the restricted mobility, not many people go out to shop. Everybody, I think they buy anything their daily needs through online. I think there are many small, medium, including the warung, including the small food vendors. They are impacted. So we need to help them. Otherwise, the impact, the worst impact of the coronavirus will spread to the whole economy. So the governments need to contain the spreading effect of the COVID. So at least by addressing these four dimensions, this is the important policies the government can take to make sure that we can make or we can control at least the impact of the COVID to the economy. So, okay, I would like to go back a bit to the to the economy subjects. I think when we first study on the macroeconomic, I think maybe this is there are my friends here teaching economics. I don't know, maybe this is introductory of macroeconomic or something like that. So during the crisis, at least there are two important policies: supply side and demand side. So in many there are many others, or in the literatures, some suggest that supply side is very important tools to address the slowing growth. Demand side, some others know demand side is very important for addressing the economic growth. So, but now I think the situation is different. This is not only about the real sector, but this is not only also about the human. This is not only about the spending capacity. This is not only also about the production capacity. This is both. These problems have enforced to be a big problem, the economy. So the solution, I quote again the Dr. Benedict, this is not linear. We cannot use for this problem, we can use supply side or we can use demand side. Both supply side and demand side must go hand in hand. So because the situation is different, the problem is every dimension of the economy is affected. Consumers are affected, people are affected, business sectors are affected. Not only these two sectors are affected, but the whole economy, in terms of the external economies, are also affected. So we need to ensure that the domestic economy can grow much better with its own capacity. So what's the government do? This is the experience from other countries. I think I have quoted some policies from other countries where they have allocated the government spending. As you know that the government policies for the crisis can be addressed at least two dimensions. The first one on the fiscal side and the monetary side. Sorry. So I would like to focus on the fiscal side. In Australia, especially from the tax and the spending side. If you see here, Australia, it allocates almost 10% of its GDP for the fiscal stimulus. So it covers, there are many types of stimulus. For instance, a tax incentive for the taxpayers, cash assistance, wage subsidies, even injection from for loan to the banks. This is, this is a very complex policies executed by Australian government. If you have seen USA even much bigger than Australia in terms of the fiscal stimulus, almost 14% of the GDP. I think from the list, I think Singapore is the biggest one. It's almost around 19% of its GDP. The government of Singapore has allocated for fiscal stimulus to fight against the impact of the coronavirus on the economy. So I think there are many countries also have its own policies to address the economy, but I think there are kind of similarities in terms of the policies in addressing the impact of the COVID. If you see here, the tax incentives are always there. Cash assistance is always there. Cash assistance is to help the poor people. By that way, they can still be able to make their living. And also, in Germany, for instance, Germany applies the subsidies for the workers and grants for the MSC and the entrepreneurs. If you see these two policies, subsidies for workers, this is important for the consumption, and grants for the small, medium, and entrepreneurs, meaning that the entrepreneurs, the business sectors, they still can do their business. At least they run their business. So when the government provides subsidies to the poor people, or for those who are impacted by the COVID, and they can buy things. By that way, the real sectors, the manufacturing, another sectors, they can produce. They can be producing, and by that way, that the whole economy is working again. I think that's very important that the two sectors, consumers and business sectors, they must be able to complete each other. By that way, that the economy can run again. So these are for examples from other countries. What about the fiscal policies that they have taken to to address on the impact of the COVID-19 to the economy? What about in Indonesia? We have three priorities: health, social safety net, and business support. This is very important. The health measures, as I mentioned earlier, that we need to healthy people. So when we have unhealthy people, we can have a strong foundation for better development. Social safety net, we need to make sure that we have people have sufficient income for their living. This is very important. And also the business support. We need to support the business, the real sector, for their activity. So when they can produce, by that way, they can hire people, and they can pay tax again to the government. And people, when they have money, they can buy something. So buy something in the market from what are produced by the real sector. So these three situations, I think, complete each other. By that way, that the government can ensure that the economy can go up again, and at least we can maintain a better situation in the coming quarters. And this is Okay, this is the detail in Asia, but maybe I'm not going to go into detail in here. And in total in Indonesia, the fiscal stimulus for the COVID-19 around 695 trillion rupiah. So it is around 4 to 5% of the total GDP of Indonesia. So it's slightly lower than other countries, but we believe that with the targeted policies, we can ensure that the Indonesian economy can perform well. At least we can cushion from the impact of the COVID-19. So the funding covers so many dimensions for supporting the economy, for the health, social protection, business incentive, corporate financing, and SMEs. So these policies address, I think, has almost addressed all dimensions in in our economic system. So I would like to a bit focus on the regional government side. On the fiscal support to the regional government, because as you know that at the end, uh, all growth, all economic development will start from the regional development. So what's happening in the most western part of Indonesia to the most eastern part of Indonesia, all together will build a national economy. So it's very important to address what is happening in the regional level. So by that way, the central government has allocated at least three additional funding to the local government. By that way, they can address its impact in its own area. So as you know, local government, they have a significant decline in its own revenue, and they have adjusted its spending. But we need to ensure that the growth at the local level is the growth which is sufficient to boost and to support the national growth. So at least government has provided three types of support. The first one on tourism. The government has provided support for the tourism. This is in particular, this is a sector which can quickly, we believe, can quickly recover when the global economy or the economy, regional economy has been improving. So we provide some allocation for the tourism sectors and provide what we call regional incentive fund. This is aims to the selected local government. Hopefully this can encourage the local government to spend the money for sectors which can help to the accelerate the economic recovery and building the infrastructure. So this is some money has been allocated for the local government, which aims to build the what we call immediate need infrastructure. For instance, building a short distance of road and or building or improvement the kampung, for instance. I think this is kinds of activities which can create new jobs for the local people, but also in the same time it can provides new income for the local people. So by that way, overall, we expect that with the policies which address both supply and demand side, the economy can cushion from the impact from the COVID-19. I think that's the big picture of Indonesian economy in terms of how we face the COVID-19. I think so. That's from me. So I will be happy to discuss with you for if you have more question in the Q&A session. That's from me. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I stop here. Wabil taufiq walhidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the Mr. Adrianto MA PhD to deliver the public lecture. We will open the discussion forum. For the first question, I will give opportunity to the people that raise hand first. First raise hand to Mr. Zulkifli. Zulkifli, are you with us? Are you there? You can deliver the question directly to our speaker. Okay, Mr. Zulkifli. Okay, if you're not ready yet, we will give a chance to Mr. Aditya Rahidayat. Miss Aditya Rahidayat, to asking a question to our speakers. The time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Isan, for the chance. My name is Tia. I am currently working in Jakarta. It's been an honor to have the chance to ask the questions to the speakers. It's been a very great.
I'm sorry, to Mrs. Tiara, can you activate your video?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hi everyone. It's been a great time to have the sessions with you all. It's been a great discussion too. So to both of the speakers, I wanted to ask regards to the human productivity in our country during not only in our country, Indonesia, but also the regions in Southeast Asia, because I know that the impact of the health disasters affected differently in each of the nations, right? The question is very simple. How to maintain the human productivity to remain stable in this kind of uncertain event? Because we know that in the future, there will be a lot of things happened without kind of predictions we could predict. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to Miss Tiara. We can okay. The speaker can answer directly. Maybe for Mr. Andrianto.
Oh, me? Okay, thank you.
Okay,
thank you. Is Aditya, right? Thank you, Aditya, for the question. This is very interesting question, and this is important question for Indonesia actually. So as you know that the human productivity in Indonesia, I think this is one of the lowest in Southeast Asia actually, especially among ASEAN. Indonesia is one of the lowest. But if we notice from, if we go back again, let's say before the crisis in 1998, Indonesians' human productivity at that time was much better than after the productivity after 1998. So because of what? Because Indonesian economy was dominated by the manufacturing sector at that time, actually, and until now actually. But after the crisis 1998, our economy, our manufacturing sector has been shrinking, and many companies, they move away from Indonesia. And now what we have in Indonesia is the manufacturing sectors with low level of technology. That's very crucial point for Indonesia. Most of manufacturing sectors in Indonesia, they only adopt what we call low level of technology. And the second one, most Indonesian manufacturing sectors, they are not really involved with the global production network. So the high quality demanded by the global production network, it is not there in Indonesian manufacturing sector. So these 2 points, this is very important for Indonesia to address. It would like to have better human quality. But again, now in this situation, of course, this is hard to do. So now is, what is the focus for Indonesia? Whether we need to make the people healthy, or we need to make the improve human productivity. I think what we need to do now is to ensure the healthy people first. Gradually, we can go to again improve the human capital, human productivity. Because without the healthy people, it's hard for us to achieve the human productivity. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you so much to Mr. Adrianto, PhD.
Can I just add a bit? Can I just add a little? Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Tiara, for your question. I think this has been a challenge to all Asian nations as well, not only to Indonesia. But what is important is from now on, of course, you can't amend the past. The past is past, it's over. What it can be done for the future is where by training and education is crucial to every institution to upscale the quality of graduates. At the same time, to instill technology in every sector within the economy. Why? Because over time, the global demand will require greater quality in goods and services. So how will that be achieved? This will be achieved by greater training, greater education, and the input of particular technology into the industry, so that at the same time there's an upskill of workers. It can be absorbed into this particular industry. Having said that, you and I know in Asia there's a fundamental problem, and the fundamental problem is actually corruption. We all know that. Now let's not say anything, but it is there. Corruption is a disease. It's like cancer, and many Asian nations are facing this problem because they are too weak to address this. And you find if corruption is happening, and in many countries, you find that the advanced countries are basically importing all the minerals from them. And what this poor country do? The only source they have is minerals, and they sell all these minerals. At the end, they don't have any more minerals to sell. What happened? The people do not get the benefit of that export income. Where does the export income go? It goes to the, of course, you and I know, it goes to certain corruptible practices. This is happening all over the world. And what really disturbs me is that they can go to the United Nations and talk on behalf of the nation, which is totally a shameful thing. Why? Because when corruption is so high, it kills the people, and the people are the one who suffer. So in order to eradicate this, is the education is important. Educating the poor, educating the marginalized, so that to upscale themselves in order for them to be productive, right? At the same time, the governance of each area, of each district, of each city must be strict enough so that this particular implementation can be seen physically, so that the next pandemic comes, countries all over the world will be sort of mitigating the impact rather than sitting there and saying, look, I'm having a negative GDP growth and all that. This pandemic is not something new. It has happened for centuries. So what are countries doing today? Are they not supposed to be prepared, or at least to have some kind of mitigating factor? While we understand each pandemic is different, but the fundamental is that people's lives is at stake. People's lives is at stake. You know, some countries don't even have enough PPE, enough facial masks, don't even have this. So now, what is the local industry doing? The local industry is supposed to have a diversified industry so that you don't depend on one area. So you have a diversification. Yes, I do understand it's easier said than done. There's so many political maneuvers in every country. But nevertheless, the function or the fundamental of every country is to bless the people. If the people are not blessed, if the people are not upscaled, if do not have social conscientiousness, if the people do not be employed properly, if the people's dreams are not being fulfilled, then the very responsibility is not being exercised. I mean, let's look at so many other countries. You look like countries like, so many other countries in the world. You find that they have so rich resources, but the people are not blessed. The people are still remaining poor. And you ask yourself, where is the money going? Where is the funds moving to? Where the country is so rich in natural resources. So therefore, there must be a concerted effort to mobilize both institutions and people in the various sectors to ensure that this is being mitigated, so that the next pandemic comes, you won't have such upsurge of unemployment. You will not have such upsurge on on death. Even you have seen in the news, some countries don't even have enough health care. I mean, these are fundamentals. Yes, we know they are poor, but you will see actually they're not really poor. They have resources, but the resources was not utilized to bless the people. At the end, the people are the ones suffering. And here, people are talking all over the world, oh, we don't have enough, our health services are backward. Why? What have you been doing since independence? Maybe some countries are independent 100 years ago, 200 years ago. What happened? What happened? So sometimes we have to go back to the fundamental. There will be continuous crises. So are we going to give excuses for each crisis that comes in? Are we going to sit back and say, oh, sorry, we can't do anything, this is what happening, everybody must take up themselves? Is this what we're going to do? If that is what we are going to do, then what's the point of having, we talk so much about various actions being done. So therefore, the fundamental is education, training and retraining, and to motivate through tax exemptions and all that for companies to take up greater, higher level of productivity streams, so that companies will be motivated, right, to introduce new technology, and that country, right, can able to export quality producers. And this is crucial, right? If we find that if these are not being done, it's not a concerted effort. That's the reason a non-linearity approach, as I spoke just now, has to be applied, where all sectors are involved, where everyone is involved to mobilizing to ensure the nation progresses. Everyone is held accountable. Not only one person, not only the person in charge, but everyone is even the layman on the street is responsible in building the nation. That is a non-linearity concept. Thank you.
Okay, thank you to Dr. Benedict. We're moving to the second question. We give opportunity to Mr. Zulkifli. Are you ready to deliver the question, Mr. Zulkifli? Time is yours. Mr. Zulkifli. Okay, if you're not ready yet, to Mr. Purmansyah Aryadi. Mr. Purmansyah Aryadi. You can ask the question directly to our speakers. Okay, if you still be ready, maybe this is a question from the YouTube. For the Mr. Adrianto. Mr. Adrianto, from Eliagus. The question is, change is inevitable. But what's the point to change mindset if all limited? How much influence the impact of life and new normal on the economy? To Mr. Adrianto.
Can you say
okay,
again?
The question is clear. Okay, thank you.
Again? Mr. Isan, can you say it again? What's the question?
Okay. I will repeat the question. Change is inevitable. But what's the point to change mindset if all limit? How much influence the impact of life and new normal on the economy?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Tatam is yours.
Yes. Let me try to conclude the questions. I think okay. Let me address at least from different perspective. So the first one on the new normal. The new normal, you know that the one point is in the first beginning I've mentioned that we have seen so many pandemics in our history, and by the time we can cope with it. Yes, we find difficulties in the beginning of the periods of the COVID, but I believe we can cope it because that's what we need to do. We need to cope with everything anyway. So when we are able to cope with the COVID, so we can go with the new normal. the new normal, I think this is um, a situation where we need to make sure that we can live in a safe and productive way. So I think these 2 points is very crucial. Safe, healthy with the safe with the COVID from the COVID, and the productive way. I think this is very crucial. So I argue that the definition of the new normal, it has these two meanings: safe and productivity. It is very, very important. So when we run our economy, that means that we can on the same in the same time we can keep everybody from the impact of the COVID. I think this is what all the governments needs to do. I think we have seen this has not happened in the United States. In many countries, we have seen this happens. So we need to cope with the COVID, and we need to be able to live with the COVID. So what we need to do? Yes, we need to find the ways, the policies to solve all issues with the COVID. So I think I I mean, I don't know. I try to understand what you mean with the change is the what the change. But I think my point is we need to restrict ourselves on the fear of the COVID-19 uh, by not doing anything. But we need to become more productive. We need to do something in our life with safe and productive way. I don't know whether my response and answers your questions, but I think my point on the new normal. That's my point, Mr. Isan.
Okay, thank you so much for Mr. Adrianto, PhD. And for we give a chance to Mr. Jamie Darhani to ask a question directly to our speakers. Mr. Jamie Darhani, the time is yours.
Hello.
Okay. Can you activate the video, Mr.?
Okay, I want to tell you the truth that I couldn't activate my video cam because there's something wrong with it. So I think
okay.
You just can listen to my voice.
Okay.
Okay,
Your
thank
voice
you.
is not clear. Sorry, your voice. Can you clear your voice, please?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me a good opportunity to ask some questions to our keynote speakers. Okay. So my first questions to Mr. Andrianto. Nowadays, there is a great opportunity. Okay.
Hello?
Okay, I'm so sorry. I want to repeat my question. So my name is Jimmy from Medan. I would like to ask questions to Mr. Andrianto. Nowadays, there is a greater possibility that the impact of the disruption on real economy during coronavirus pandemic will be much higher. Do you think that this time the impact of the crisis on real economies will be stronger than on financial sectors? What is the future of global financial sectors under COVID-19? Thank you. And the second question goes to Mr. Benedict. You have previously presented about the nonlinear business. My questions are, how to measure the degree of nonlinearity of the economy at the level of enterprises, districts, or nations? In other words, on the basis of what we can say that we are moving or have already moved to a nonlinear business or economy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. First, we will please to Dr. Benedict to answer the question, and then for Mr. Adrianto, PhD.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for the question, Jamie. Thank you. Yes, the particular measurement of non-linearity can be found in papers like from Kochani and Christopher Vance, 2018. That is from the Academy of Management Journal. where you find they will give you a stochastic model to measure the non-linearity impact. So there's a huge formula there that will tell you at what level is your particular organization is at non-linearity. Now, having said that, if you were to refer to my slide, there are certain questions for us to begin with. Number one, how do we know that your organization is still on a traditional mode? Is there dispersion of leadership? If it is none, then you know they are falling on a traditional approach, not a non-linearity approach. It is a linearity approach. What if is the particular processes, is it very much controlled or is it dispersed? So from there we'll know whether the indication is. Now, before we do a measurement, if that indication is positive, then it's fine. The measurement will compensate your findings. But sometimes you find that, it could be in and out. Sometimes you find there is a control and there's not control and you are just dancing in the wind. So if that's the case, then very much you find that the organization is not prepared for a non-linearity approach, because non-linearity approach means you're giving up control here and there. So when you give up control, that means there must be responsible people to take charge. So sometimes organizations don't want that. But then in the long run, it has a positive impact. It definitely will have a positive on the sustainability of the company, of the sustainability of the institution. And to understand, remember, the model of B2C doesn't work any longer. The model of C2B works. Why? To know that what the consumer needs and the business will be agile enough to change to meet the needs of the consumer. For that to happen, the processes must be readdressed. For that to happen, you find that the mindset had to change. So that is a challenge, true. But having said that, to answer your question, the measurement can be found in the works of Kochani, Kotchani, and Christopher Vance, 2018. You can find that in the Academy of Academy of Management, where you find that there's a huge pages of formula that will help you to gauge. Yeah, thank you. I hope I've answered your question, Jamie. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. For the Mr. Adrianto.
Yes. Thank you, Jamie, for the questions. So let me start with the first question on the what's the impact on the COVID or the financial sector. We have seen that in our slides there are some promising indicators that the financial sectors will recover again. We have seen that some indicators, the stock exchange, not only even in at the Indonesian level, from the global level, we also see some signs of improvement in terms of the financial sector. Not only spending from the volatility level, which has been going down, but also we have seen that some global indicators, both the stock market, I think it also shown some positive sign. But if we learn from the past experience in the finance in the crisis, most crises always involve the financial sectors. When we start from the real sectors crisis, for instance, tulip crisis in the Netherlands, at the end it also involved the financial crisis. And another types of crisis still again involves the financial sectors. If you remember the dot crisis in the United States in around 2000, which starts from the bubble of the dot-com sectors. At the end, it impacts on the banking sectors. So I classify banking sector is also the financial sector. So we still see that in any event, financial sectors will be there. Financial sectors will be one of the sectors which will always be involved, which will always be impacted. But the issue is how how the uh, prudent policies can be provided by the government. That's very crucial. If we see the higher connectivity in the financial sectors, so the finance sectors linkage among countries are now more complex. Uh, and you have seen there are financial hubs in many countries in not only in ASEAN. So you can see the investors can easily withdraw their money and put their money where they consider it is safe. So the point is, what the governments need to do to anticipate on the impact of COVID on the financial sectors is to provide the prudent policies to make sure the investors is convenient with the policies. So I think that's very important point. And what about the future of the financial sectors? Um, I think we learned from after the 3 months or 4 months of the COVID, everybody stays at home, uh, and we are still able to work from home using the Zoom, for instance, or through the WebEx. I think I honestly have not imagined that we can work with this kind of mode of work. Um, Normally, when we work from home, we do it by using WhatsApp, or we can do it by the email. But now, with almost 500 people, we can talk each other. I think this is a kind of a big jump to the mode of process of business, not only in the corporate sector but also in the government sectors. This is very big jump. So I think this is will also giving a kind of new picture of the financial sector in the future. So many people will deal with the what we call the new technology. So um, everybody, I think, will do everything through the online system. And I think this is a requirement that everybody needs to have a strong capacity to have the knowledge on how we can get benefit from the advance of the technology. So when we go back to again at the financial sectors, and I think the financial sector is still developing, but the need of sufficient knowledge how to benefit from the financial benefit from the advance of the technology that will give the picture of how people can get benefit from the financial sector in the future. I think that's from me.
Okay, thank you for Mr. Adrianto, PhD. I think we have one last question because we run out of time. The last question is from YouTube streaming from Arif Setiawan, to both of the speakers. The world has often experienced a pandemic. According to my knowledge, once 100 years a large scale. Why are we always not ready? Maybe for the first answer, we beg willingness for Dr. Benedict to answer the question.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. Yes, this is a very puzzling question. Well, because every 100 years is there's so the each pandemic is different. The type of pandemic is different. Means we are talking about 100 years. We're talking about at least the passing of one generation, and that means the generation has already passed. Now it's a new generation, and they are faced with this pandemic. And furthermore, there is, I would say, sometimes you find that record keeping, of course, 100 years ago, people don't really keep a record. Maybe now and the future 100 years, there could be some record keeping on the actions and things like that. So, but what is important, it's not from, how do we learn is to basically to get ourselves prepared. Even companies, institutions, nations to get prepared. And how to get prepared is not easy. It's easier said than done. And I'm sure Dr. Adrianto will agree with me. It's easier said than done. It's not easy to implement all this. But having said that, we got to start somewhere, right? We got to start somewhere. We got to start in terms of education, in terms of training, in terms of mobilizing surplus funds, right? To keep aside surplus funds, right? So that, in fact, I've always advised companies, they come and ask me, what do I do? I always tell them, you always keep a portion of your revenue in a particular separate account for you to face during rainy season, for you to face during issues or crisis. And those companies that have adopted this approach, it's a very easy and fundamental approach. Those days, you remember when parents give us money and parents always advise us to keep a certain percentage in savings. The same approach. Why? Because during the crisis of COVID-19, you find that these companies have surplus funds which is kept aside. And that funds now has been feeding them for the last 4 months for the employees. And they do not have to cut wages. They don't have to, although the business is down, they don't have to close shop. Why? Because this surplus funds is helping them to get into, to actually mobilize, to have new techniques on how to do marketing, how to sell their various stocks that they have. So therefore, it's going back to the fundamentals on integrity, going back to fundamentals of righteousness. That's what we need in this world. We need in this world integrity people. We need in this world people who are righteous, who will do things not only right, but will do things for the benefit of the community, right? Not looking for their own benefit, but benefiting the community. We need integrity people, so that the whatever crisis that may come, maybe something that is worse off is going to come, we don't know. But whatever is coming, we are able to embrace and carry on, right? Carry on and embrace, so that we can able to address all these issues, right? So that the whole community now is basically very much watchful. You look at the example of New Zealand. New Zealand is one of the countries that was very much applauded on the action on COVID-19. Of course, you may say it's a small country and all the kind of things. Yes, you can say that. But however, the challenges they face is quite similar. But how they're able to address COVID-19, and until it became a good example all over the world. Why? Because it means during a time of crisis, leadership is crucial. Leadership has to give proper and accurate information. Leadership have to make sure there's no panic on the market. Make sure the strategies are being implemented and tangibly seen by the people on the floor. So that means the people know that, look, the leadership is honest. They know what they're doing. They trust the leadership. That's the reason you see a good example during this time. New Zealand is one of the most applauded countries, right? And also the other one is Germany, where you find that how they address COVID-19 is an exemplary measure. Right? I hope I've answered your question. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for Dr. Benedict. For the second opportunity, please to Mr. Adrianto, PhD, to answer the question.
Thank you for the question. Maybe I would like to address from the economics perspective. Maybe we know that there is an axiom in the economics that that's saying all models are flawed. So I think this is raised by George Box, I think in around 1970s, where he's saying that in terms of the statistical point of view, all models are wrong. What does it imply? That means that we have limitation on predicting the future. So I think this reflects that we never know what is the event in the coming years, in the coming decades. I think this is not about the lack or the weakness of the scientific or the knowledge. I think this is the interesting part of the knowledge. So when there is one dimension where we do not know exactly 100%, this gives an opportunity for us to improve our life, to improve our capacity. So when we can predict or forecast something in 100%, I think this is not dynamic anymore. There is no more interest in our life. So I think with our capacity not able to forecast something in 100% something in the future. I think this is very a bless for us. By that way, we can keep improving ourselves, keep improving our policies in the future. So with regard to the COVID, I think if we go back again to the past, we have seen some periods of the influenza, maybe in the Spanish flu. And then if you remember around in 1950, 58, there was an Asian flu, which spread to United States as well, and spread to, I think, spread to some other countries. I think maybe Ireland, maybe if I'm not mistaken. And then if you remember again, we have avian flu in around 2000, and we have seen that there are so many new generations of influenza. But I think this is something which, in terms of science, we can predict that the mutation, but it's hard for us to predict what's the magnitude, what kind of the mutation which can impact our life. I think that's another part, which has George Bock has mentioned that with our model that we have, we can predict what kind of influenza we can face in the coming years, in the future. But what is the magnitude? What is how significant, how large the impact to our life? Maybe I think it's quite hard. But I think that's interesting part for the science to to keep improving the science both on the policy side. I think that's from me. Thank you, Pak.
Okay, thank you for what our speaker. We have a great discussion. We learned a lot of things today from our great discussion. Maybe this is the end of the discussion forum. Thank you for both our speaker. Thank you for your attention. For all the participants, I am Muhammad Ihsan Hajri. Thank you for attention and sorry for my mistakes. In the end, I will say wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Mr. Ihsan.
Okay, I will get back to Mrs. Isnawati, MSE, as the host. To Mrs. Isnawati, the time is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ihsan, before to moderator, Dr. Ihsan Hajri, and for the great sharing session, for all the keynote speaker. As our promise to all the participants, that we have 3 giveaway that will be shared to all the participants. And we will ask the keynote speaker to give the question, maybe 1 question for the keynote speaker. Maybe start from Dr. Benedict to ask a question for the participant.
Oh, okay. Okay, right. Right. Okay, what are the 3 non-linear approaches that I shared in my slide? It's very easy, isn't it? It's a very easy question. Very easy question, right?
Yeah.
The 3 approaches that I shared in my slide, right? Okay.
Yes, participants. We have who can't answer the question could raise your hand. Okay. Who's that? Okay. We give the chance to the Mr. Burhanuddin. Yes. Okay, Mr. Burhanuddin, you can answer now. Please unmute your speaker. Okay, we give the chance to another participant. Do we have any? Have here is Mr. Hendra. Please,
Can
Mr.
you
Hendra.
repeat your question, sir?
Yes, what are the three approaches in the non-linearity that I've shown in my slide? I think that is the second last slide before thank you.
I think this is three ya.
Yes, three.
Masih ada ini.
Tripping point,
Yes.
self-organizing, and semiotic square.
Yes, very good, very good.
Oh,
Very good, excellent,
congratulations,
excellent.
Pak Hendra. You got the giveaway from our committee, and don't forget to contact our committee for your giveaway. And then move to the second question. It will be from Dr. Adrianto.
Okay. What are the three financial supports provided by Indonesian government to the local governments to accelerate the recovery of Indonesian economy during the COVID-19? It's on my slide.
Okay, that's a clue, yeah. Okay. Any participant, you can raise your hand. Maybe Pak Burhanuddin, Mr. Burhanuddin, would you like to answer the question? Any other participant? Please raise your hand. Maybe you could repeat the question.
Okay. Let me repeat the questions. What are the three financial supports provided by Indonesian government to the local government for economic recovery?
Okay, remember the clue, yeah? It's in the last slide. Anyone? Oh yeah, we have. Mrs. Sri. Okay, Mrs. Sri.
Yes, I am.
Okay, you may answer the question.
Okay. The three fiscal support to regional government. The first is tourism. Second, regional incentive fund. And the third is fiscal special allocation fund reserve.
Perfect. Good, thank you.
Congratulations, Mrs. Sri. You got the giveaway from our committee, sponsored by Erlangga Book Publisher.
Thank you.
Okay. For the last questions, I will ask the moderator to give the questions.
I will give an easy question. What's the name of both of our speakers' full name with title and affiliation? I think it's very easy.
Wow,
okay,
that's good questions. Yeah, if you follow this webinar, then you will find the answer. Okay, anyone could raise your hand? Okay, we give the chance to Mr. Randy to ask to answer the question. Mr. Randy, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay.
The first is Dr. Benedict Valentine Arulanandam, PhD. He is a senior lecturer and research from Malaysia, Sunway College. And then the second is Mr. Adrianto, MA, PhD. He is a director for General Transfer Fund, Kemenkeu RI.
Thank you.
Okay, that's right. Okay, that's right. Perfect.
Wow, it's
Thank you, Mr. Randy.
complete answer from Mr. Randy. Okay, thank you very much for all the participants. It's very great to have you here. And we have reached the end of our agenda for today. But before we close this webinar, I'll invite you all to join the photo session together. And I hope you could turn on your video camera for better picture. Okay, please be prepared. 1, 2, 3. Okay, once more maybe. Take your best shot, yeah. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
For
Thank
all
you.
the participants, for all the keynote speaker, it's very, very honored to have you here. And before I close this webinar, I would like to inform you that the e-certificate will be given only for the participants that accomplish the whole session of the webinar, and you have submit your feedback through the link that already shared in the chat forum in the next 30 minutes. So before we close, I'm Isnawati. On behalf of the committee, would like to apologize for any inconvenience during the event. Hopefully, this event will be given many advantage and improve our life in the next future. Thank you very much for you all, and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Benedict.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you,
Mr. Chris. And thank you so much,
Mr.
Dr.
Benedict.
Isni. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Adrianto, and also our lecturer from Economics Faculty, for all the participants.
Thank you, Dr.
Mrs. Isni
Benedict.
Andre.
I can't hear you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Benedict. Thank you, Dr. Adrianto.
Dr. Isni, thank you so much. Send
Thank
my
you so much.
regards
It's nice
Prof.
to meet you.
Adam.
Oh yeah, please. I will.
Thank you.
I will. Bye.
Okay,
Assalamualaikum.
bye-bye. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.